Hello, everyone, and a happy new year to you, your friends, family, everybody. Hope the 2026 has been a fantastic start already for you and wish you all the best for the future. Well, welcome back to K Notes. This is the Living Room Dialogue. I want to talk to you about why do you always feel tired? Why does your rest doesn't seem like resting? Why you feel busy but not truly productive? And why self-care at times just feels like the another task? This is going to be a different conversation, a different dialogue. With me today is Raj Shekhar Banerjee. In this real, unscripted living room dialogue, together we are breaking down three big ideas you might have been wrong about. Number one, that pushing through tiredness is your strength. Number two, that the stress is always your enemy. And number three, thinking harder will get you the solution. By the way, let me tell you, what you're going to witness next is not some fancy showbiz edited show. It's a real talk between two individuals. No hype, no acting, just practical truths that you, I, and everybody can use. Can you do me a quick favor? If this sounds like what you need, and if you're patient enough to kind of go through it all, hit that like button, because that helps the algorithm to make this reach to as many people as possible. And that's the intent to pay it forward. Why? At the end of the day, to help everybody to be a better human being. And on that note, welcome back to K Notes in the Living Room Dialogue with our new guest today, Raj Shekhar Banerjee. This is your host, Kaustav, and let's begin. At first, Raj, I'd like to thank you for taking out time and being here at K Notes for the Living Room Dialogue with me. So welcome and a happy new year.
Thank you, Kaustav. Happy New Year to you too. And although I'm sitting in my office room, which is not my living room, and I'm a full-time dad, not working at the moment, but this room is very much alive, so we can still go with the feeling that it's a living room in a way.
Great. So I have a lot of things that I'd like to unfold with you, the perspectives that you hold, the work that you have done. Let me start with probably like the question that I have to ask you, right? And this is basis your own journey, which to me has been fascinating. You are an engineer, and you gotten into the corporate side, dealing with operations. You have been there in the system. Then you pivot, right? Today, you are a sensory awareness coach working with neuroscience. Additionally, you have taken a new responsibility of being a father, which we will touch base very separately because it's an important topic as well. But just, Raj, how was your journey? What was that moment of change that made you who you are today?
That's a great question to start with. I just love how you frame that. If there was just a one-dimensional answer to it, I'm sorry, I won't be able to, because this moment came in packets and batches. I think it all started with how we transitioned from our college life to entering the corporate world. I remember we were taking a flight for Chennai for our campus placements, and I saw so many people at the airport waiting area with their laptops on. They were wearing their suits. It just looked so fascinating for me that one day I want to be like them. This persona of a corporate person, working hard, striving for success, who's hustling. Cut to year, 2 year later, I was struggling to understand why am I working in IT, because it wasn't. I wasn't feeling like I belong here, and so that was, I think, the first moment when I realized that there needs to be some change in the path. Do I really want to pursue this? Do I really want to work in IT after doing engineering? And just going through these struggling questions or struggling thoughts that, do I really see myself here for next 5 years? That was the question I was asked in my HR round. And I, with full enthusiasm, said, not just 5 years, I see myself 10 years. And here I was realizing that I had lied to myself. Or probably I
Yeah.
wasn't aware. There was this lack of awareness in that sense. Then came the struggle of leaving a big company, established brand, which itself is a struggle. I had to basically convince my parents that I'm leaving a big brand like Tata. If you feel 100% that this is not the place you want to be, go ahead, take your decision. We are there to support you. That happened when I joined a startup, when I said that I want to get into sales and marketing. Then from sales and marketing, went to sales operations, international sales. And then came the point where I was at my lowest phase. I was at my peak career with international sales, corporate life, handling US clients. I had actually started becoming that person that I saw at the airport, taking my laptop out, making use of every time that I could. And that's one of the lies that we tell. 2013 is when we started working, first job. Then 2015 came the phase when I switched from Tata to a smaller company. And then eventually figuring out that, okay, I want to continue my profession or my career in sales. And then 2015 to 2019, I worked in international sales and sales operations. And this all happened in India. And yeah, also this also includes switching places. So from Hyderabad, Gujarat to Noida, and then that's where I stayed for next 4 years. And when I say I was at the peak, I had started imagining myself by buying a house or owning a house in Greater Noida.
Okay.
So that was the trajectory I was on. That okay, Greater Noida, not too far, office is close, Noida, I'll get a
Mm.
car. Also in sales, every 3 months, you hit your targets, you get
Mm.
big commissions. That was something that kept me engaged. I actually enjoyed my work. I really enjoyed it. Although there were moments when I was trying to get into a sales role, and in most of these interviews, I clearly remember this moment. Somebody was a director of a company and he said, "You're too nice to be in sales. Why do you want to be in sales?" I always thought that there needs to be something that I don't know, or probably I have got wrong
Mm.
impression of who's supposed to be in sales. But you need to have good listening skills. You need to solve problem, and to solve problem, you need to understand what the other person is facing, rather than imposing
Mm.
a solution that maybe the other person doesn't
Yeah.
even need. So that was another disconnection that I had. However, with this whole profile, and I was working from 2015 to 2019, I underwent a lot of changes. The biggest drawback was that I was working US shift late nights. So my whole work shift was different. My body cycle was different. I used to be an early riser since childhood. My natural way of working is I peak in the morning. I have more energy in the first phase of the day, and second phase it starts dipping. And then I chose to work, or I chose a work environment where I had to completely switch my body
Yeah.
cycle. This put me under a lot
Mm.
of stress physically. Mental stress came later because you have deadlines every 3 months. You have to meet your targets. But I think that was the part which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed having those targets. Okay, I'm left with this much. Okay, let me see if I can do that. That gave me this push to go on. But in that process, I completely ignored what was happening inside. I completely ignored my body signs. I completely ignored that I was under immense stress with this change of circadian rhythm, my body cycle, followed with unhealthy lifestyle choices. So you hit your target, you celebrate, you go out, party. You miss your targets, you celebrate. You don't celebrate, but you still go out and party because you want to get over that depression. Okay, Monday, I need to start a new quarter full of enthusiasm. So, okay, let's take this day off. This continued. And this eventually, in end of 2018, left me with a condition which put me in a state where I could not continue working. So I had a gastrointestinal infection. My gut health was really bad because of the lifestyle choices, because of unhealthy food. You can say a lot of things. But understand this, that when you're in chronic stress, it puts your immune system on the fence. Like your immunity is not at its peak. So you're basically fighting extra hard to even fight simple things like common cold and flu and small fever. And because of that, I had to move back to Dehradun. I had to undergo minor surgery, but basically there were these blood clots inside intestine, whole little rectum area, and they basically had to be removed. That tipping point. I was bedridden. I used to be 70 kilo back then. After the surgery, I was 49 kilo. I was put under antibiotics for 3 months,
Wow.
which is insane. Imagine you're recovering from a gut health problem, and then you're put on antibiotics for a longer duration, which actually hampered my gut bacteria. You need to have good bacteria as well. So recovery became difficult.
Wow.
And on top of it, I basically had to confront my team, my manager, my employer, that I won't be able to return to my job. That whole transition taught me a lot about what behaviors I had acquired in last 5, 6 years. I had become so loyal to work, and this is not against the company, this is not against the work. It's just that in that role, I saw myself at peak performance. It's like when you hike to the top of the mountains. Throughout the trail, you're working hard and pushing yourself to reach the top. Once you reach the top, you see everything except for the path that you
Mm.
took. But now I was imagining myself being at the top of the hill, but instead of looking at the view around, I'm looking at the path. That what did I do? Could I have stopped at any point instead of bringing me to this edge of the cliff moment? Could I have taken a different route? Those 6 months gave me so much to reflect on. That's when I went back to my safe haven, which was meditation, something I acquired from my grandfather. So these 6 months, I went back to this internalized person that, okay, I don't have a job, although my manager so kind that, Raj, take your time, recover. Whenever you feel like coming back, we are always there. Don't feel like you don't have a job. We'll always be happy to have you because you've been a strong
Yeah.
pillar to my team. And that was so reassuring that, okay, I can always go back, but do I really want to? And that's when I started exploring, okay, what else do I want to? I always wanted to study in Europe, do my master's, study business because I had been working in sales and marketing for over 6 years. I thought, okay, this might be a good time. Let me take a chance. Like, that's the time when you think, what's the worst that can happen? You're already at the lowest. You can't fall lower than where you are. So even if you get rejection, you can
Yeah.
handle it totally well. You handle antibiotics, surgery, being on anesthetics in the operation theater, and you still recall elements from those memories, which a lot of people find traumatic. But I felt like it was just part of that awakening process.
Interesting.
And from there, it brought me to Germany, got my admission letter, moved to Germany. And so this is when I'm still in my recovery phase. My gut health is still getting better. I think that decision of changing location was in my favor because it really helped my body recover faster. I show my offer letter to my parents, and I was expecting a different response from their side. I was expecting a reaction from them. However, my father was, I don't expect my father to respond like that in that moment. He said, yeah, if this is your calling, go for it. You've had a support, so don't stop yourself. That gave me another push. Okay, yeah, let's go for it. The change of place helped me recover. Berlin itself is known for a lot of greenery, a lot of parks, and every day I was walking 4 to 5 kilometers. Enhance your metabolism. It needs to have energy, and movement creates more energy, contrary to the idea that I'm sitting, I'm relaxing, I'm saving energy.
Very interesting.
Instead, when you go out for a walk, even if it's 5 minute walk, 10 minute walk, you go out for a walk in nature, you get higher dopamine. The dopamine actually rebalances itself. But again, you're in nature, so that also triggers your serotonin, your oxytocin level. Now, everything on the positive side, I'm saying about the positive neurotransmitters here, when they are at their optimum best, they help your body perform better. And at the same time, let's talk about cortisol, which is the stress hormone. When you go out for a walk, any physical movement lowers your cortisol levels because that gets absorbed. But that was one of the myths. The moment I get brain fog, which is very common issue that a lot of people face. What exactly is brain fog? Your critical thinking side, your prefrontal cortex. When these neurotransmitters they work, they also leave some leftovers, which are residues of these neural interaction. And sometimes your brain needs time to cleanse that. There is a cleansing process in your deep sleep, which happens in the third phase of the night. For that, you need to have low dopamine. So the deep sleep phase is connected with low dopamine. If you don't have low dopamine, you won't have deep sleep phase, which means that your brain will not be able to cleanse everything. When you have leftovers or residues and you go to work next day, and first thing you see is that my manager wants to have a meeting with me, these residues are the ones that get triggered. So that's the reason why we say that when you feel stressed, it's the neck and shoulder that heavy.
Overwhelming
Your
health
body,
cure. Mm.
yeah, it's just that your body hasn't had enough recovery time to get rid of those toxins. They were supposed to be going out to your kidneys and then flushed out through your respiratory system. Understanding these systems became my go-to videos. I wasn't consuming comedy skits or anything in my COVID lockdown phase. I was rebuilding my knowledge around what are these systems? How do we function? My thesis topic was around subconscious marketing practices and how it impacted behaviorism during COVID. I explored more of sensory processing, how our brain processes information, how we make decisions. Quite a complex theme, but that's when I came across the whole idea of sensory processing, sensory grounding, how we make sense of the world. In our schooling, we are taught about the five senses. We have sense organs, we have five senses. This is what happens. And we hold the same knowledge throughout our lives without realizing that they're not just five, they are more than that. Currently, there is arguably not an exact estimate, but a lot of research suggests that we might have somewhere between 25 to 30 senses.
Okay.
But we are aware of five things. And now
Sorry, Raj,
creates a problem.
these 25, would you say that they are completely different than these five senses, or they could be categorized as subsets to these five senses? And if you could give some examples, as in one or two.
Absolutely. So the five senses we already know: sight, auditory, then we have gustatory, taste, smell, and touch, tactile. So these are five senses. Other than this, we have two more which we daily use. One is proprioception, which is your body position. So there is vestibulation, which is body balance, sense of balancing. Like when you're walking, your head goes forward. So there's this whole gyroscopic mechanism which understands the air pressure from outside and your body balance. When you're walking or running, your head goes forward. So how lower that center of gravity? It's just a sense. You don't consciously do it. It just happens. It's a system which is made that way. Other senses would be the sense of pH level or blood pressure. How do we change blood pressure suddenly, understanding that the temperature has fallen? So the outside temperature is low, you felt it in the skin. So it's part of your tactile sensory system, but it's a subset, like you said. So You can categorize or subset more than 25 to
That's
30.
new. I had no clue.
I had the same response when I read about these. In 2021, I was able to find 12 or 13. So from 21 to 26, the 12, 13 senses have already become 30. So I'm glad that there is
That's
research
happening.
going in this field. There is a lot of new evidence coming up. So when we talk about being present, it's important that we feel our complete body. A lot of challenges, a lot of people face challenge when they're asked to do meditation or mindfulness activity because no one taught us to be aware of our body. This sensory system was missing from our awareness. What you're not aware of, you can't really comprehend it or you can't make sense. If you're not aware that you need to drink water, you will not, you'll suffer under the context that maybe something is happening to me. I don't know what it is.
It's like how they say, right? If you can't measure something, you can't achieve something.
Absolutely. That also applies to wellness, health, and like you said, something that cannot be measured, cannot be achieved. And this was this phase where I was getting my research hat on. I was also experimenting with different things. I've been practicing meditation for almost 16, 17 years now. Understanding why it works for me and not for other people. I used to hang out with people from diverse background, people from Ecuador, people from Nigeria, people from Kazakhstan. And I thought I'll be able to help them meditate. Instead, I realized that there's a gap between understanding what to do in a meditation and understanding how we are conditioned to certain things. For example, our brain likes to predict, like it's a predictive orbit. Everything that we are doing, it works on a predictive nature. So when we predict, we get a short spike from our dopamine system that okay, you got that right. When you get something wrong, you get a dip, but you also learn a new strategy that okay, this didn't work for me. So the brain always is hungry for information, but it also wants to be in control. In control in the sense that it wants to have certainty. Uncertainty is not something that our brain likes. Then it starts to feel all haywire and the anxiety kicks in and there's this chronic stress that creeps in, which is just a natural process. This is the most common thing that I've heard from over thousands of people in last 10 years who say that I've tried meditation, but I can't control my thoughts. They keep on coming. And I only ask them, why do you have to control them? From where do you get this idea that you have to control your thoughts? They are thoughts. This is the first time that you're looking inside. This is in your conscious focus because you're not looking outside. You've shut down the sensory information coming from your eyes and other senses. And hence you can reflect on what's happening inside. But this has been happening all along.
Yeah.
So that idea of not being able to sit with your thoughts is something that I realized, okay, there is a slight gap. And hence I started exploring what could be these small activities. And I came across sensory grounding, which became part of my activities that I've published in my first book. But that sensory grounding did not leave me. It's still there. And every day I read something new about it and it just fascinates me. So I'm glad that they are finding more senses for us to make sense of ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Raj. I think as you were talking about your journey and your experience, I'd also like to call out that thank you for taking that time to take me through that journey because quite often what happens is that at the back of our mind, or at least I'll speak about myself, we tend to get to the highlights first, right? But as you were sharing, I could go with you through your process. And if I have to visualize, it was like these are these puzzle pieces that you have. And as you were talking through, I was like, okay, this is where it gets fit in. This is where it gets fit in, right? Be it starting from your point of looking at something and envisioning it for self, taking a step where is not conventional, going through physical, mental, emotional challenges for a prolonged period of time, and then slowly exploring and unfolding the territory which you were not privy to. You touched upon a lot of interesting aspects, and to be honest with you, a lot of it we will deep dive. But a few things that kind of, stood out to me that was interesting. Like you mentioned about being in hustle, right? Chronic stress, and then your way of living. As you were talking about your journey, I could sense like you made huge shift in the way you conducted yourself, be it with the walk, be it with meditation, be it with your exploration of senses, right? This is coming from a place where I have observed, I continue to observe, and I'm assuming that you have seen the same. This whole thing of wearing busy as that badge of honor. And when you look at it through the lens of neuroscience that you kind of touched upon, would you agree
Mm.
that this constant busyness is a dysfunctional anxiety? That's where I want your input to come in. Someone is really wanting to hustle and they're constantly listening, like you work hard, you do well, and then you get paid. When you get paid, you do this, you get this, and all of that. How do you think it affects the brain's ability?
So I think in your question itself, there are two, 3 points that we should really explore because these are the myth. Let me start with the idea of being able to
Mm,
multitask. Like if you can multitask, you are highly
mm,
productive. That's true to a certain extent because imagine our brain is, and there are these executive functions that are frontal part, which is the prefrontal cortex, which performs, which includes planning, goal alignment, task initiation, time management. Let's say you're reading a document from your client and then you take a break and read a blog post. Now you're utilizing the same parts of your brain, but for different approaches now. First one was reading through a client's document. So you had to be really cautious that what are the points, what are the key points for me to take. So you were in a
mm,
consumption mode. You were really consuming it. But when you're reading a blog post or reading a book, now you're not really consuming, but you're also being creative at the time, like
mm.
visualizing the text. So it's the same function, but using different parts of the brain. The problem happens when we multitask between two different things. One could be giving a presentation, and then right after giving a presentation, you want to jump into a sales call. Now, you might feel that this person has just given a presentation, so he's in a flow. But when you're presenting, you've activated different parts of your brain.
Interesting.
It's more like I'm the one delivering. So I'm the giver here. But when you go on a sales call, you need to be more receiving. So you need to be more listening, not the one delivering. Understanding these nuances tells you that, and it takes a lot of cognitive effort to switch between tasks. How I explain it to students or people when I meet them for workshops is think about nature. Everything in nature has a cycle, it has phases, it goes up, it comes down. There's a reason why we have these cycles in our body. So, cortisol, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, they also function in a cyclic way. Cortisol, for example, spikes before you wake up. But this is applicable for people who are early risers. When I was doing my night shift, my whole cortisol cycle, or it's called CAR, cortisol awakening response, this whole cycle gets pushed to the afternoon. So if you're in a chronic stress phase, you won't be able to fall asleep. And then come these paradoxes that you're stressed, so you want to relax. Because you want to relax, you reach out to the easiest low effort dopamine kick, which is your
Right,
phone.
right,
Go
just
for
holding
social
on to
media.
that, like there were a lot of things. I want to
Yeah,
take some time with it, right? And also, many may
absolutely.
connect immediately with the scientific or neuroscience semantics, right? Now, you cortisol, it's something that gives you the rush in the morning, and your body needs to let out so that it conserves your energy. I'm also correlating it to what you said. Sitting tight will not save or give you energy, but you move and it kind of gives. That's where you started walking and you were breaking the myth there. You mentioned that after cortisol, there is another thing that kind of kicks in. Before that, you were talking about this multitask thing, and you said very interesting aspect that your brain, different parts are applying different traits to get something done. Are you saying when a manager at a workplace tells employees you need to take more responsibilities and through the day you need to switch hats, from a neuroscience standpoint, it's not healthy?
It's not healthy. But if the same manager says, let's say that manager is you. So goes to the employees and say, okay, these are the tasks that needs to be done today. I want you to take a look at the task and see which one is the most difficult one, or which one would you like to do first. And then as you're done with one task, let's catch up and take a walk around the campus. Let's talk about the last movie you watched. Let's vent out. Let's not talk about the same thing what you did, because that we can do later when you are in that phase of discussing. So you take a project, you take a task, you do it, then you wind down, because that's what we learn from nature. You start, you peak, and you don't want to stay in that plateau.
Yeah.
Because that plateau is unhealthy for your cognitive energy from your mental, physical well-being perspective. I'm not saying that you can't do multiple tasks in a day, but multitasking without giving enough transition. This transition can be subjective. Somebody might be able to transition from one task to the other in a lesser time duration than the other person. This is where self-awareness comes in. People who understand how their energy cycle functions, or what activities they can do that can enhance their abilities and not reduce them. One example is you're given a task that, okay, brainstorm about these 3 ideas. You're trying to think and the ideas don't come to you. You literally have brain fog because your cognitive capacity has exhausted for the time being. It's not exhausted for the day, but for the time being. Now, there are 2 people. First person keeps on sitting, keeps on scribbling, writing whatever comes to mind. Now, this person may come with 10 ideas, go to the manager, show them, and manager says, oh, these are trash. I don't like them. Go work on it again. And there's the second person who's like, I need a break. Goes to the washroom, takes a break, drinks water. So there are 2 things which are happening. One is a change of location. When you're sitting at that cubicle, when you're sitting at the desk, your brain kind of, or your senses, so there are different senses at work, but your sense of understanding, I'm in this position, if I don't deliver, I might get fired. So fear creeps in, which activates your stress to a certain level. When you are in a stress response cycle, your brain shuts down every non-essential work, including your digestion, your sex drive, because at that point you don't want to populate, or you don't want to think about, oh, I want to have an offspring. That's non-essential. The essential part is that I need to make myself feel safe. I can either escape this. This is where the fight and flight response comes. There's the same thing of cutting down non-essentials. Thinking, cognition is also part of non-essential, because then amygdala, which is part of the stress system in your brain, that takes over. And amygdala's response, which is set in the middle part of our brains, close to the basal ganglia, again, not going too much into the technical terms, but this has only one role: to keep you safe. Now, how can I keep you safe? I either escape this, or I avoid this, or I fight this. I have an argument with my manager, or I completely freeze. Brain fog is also freezing mechanism, that your brain is trying to conserve more energy for you to face your manager later. It's still thinks in that way of saving you. And so these are some of the elements that is happening in one sense. The second person who went for a short break has this aha moment sitting on the toilet seat. A lot of people I've been coaching business leaders and founders always say, Raj, why does it happen that we have all these creative ideas when we are sitting taking a shit in the morning? Because that's where your body is fully relaxed. It doesn't see anything. It doesn't feel any external threat. And it moves back to the point where your creativity was stuck. And the brain wants to get rid of these stocked up activities or stocked up tasks. And then it thinks that, this was pending. Now I have this creative flow. Let me get done with it. So immediately it creates connections. You have this idea, you have this aha moment, and you're like, oh, okay. Same thing happens when you go for a walk. So this would be the first suggestion if you're experiencing brain fog, sitting in your corporate role. Change the position, get some movement, drink, and you can also co-regulate. So instead of talking to your manager about, hey, I'm not able to do this, talk about something else. Hey, how was your date? Or how was your vacation? Tell me something about what happened last evening. You break the pattern. Now, break the pattern can happen in many ways. You change the location, you change the environment, you change the person. What you're doing is you're taking pressure off that part of the brain which was really overloaded.
Yeah.
You let it relax, you give it some transition. Let it rest. When it goes to a phase of lower point or a crash, it has no other way but to come up from there.
That's the intuitive
That's,
nature.
that's
Like
how
that'll come.
the modern lifestyle or modern mechanisms that we have, even productivity, we are told that we need to be 100% throughout the day. But that's
And
not possible. You can be 100% in the morning and then you can be 30% in the afternoon. Now, 30%, if you give 30% of your effort, you're still giving 100%. You don't have to give 100% because where will you get that rest of the 70%? So this unreal expectations.
the reason why I am resonating with this so much, and I'm sure many would be, because what you're saying, if you look at it, it's simple, but it's so complex basis the conditioning that we have had. Like, I think what I'm taking away as the key learning is when you're doing something, your brain has different parts, and a particular part is activated. Now, it's important that you go through a cycle, you go through a phase of it. So you do, and you transition through that phase where there is also a cooling. It's like when you go to the gym, you have a cooling period for your body, right? So you do that, and then you kind of move. The second thing that I'm picking up is break the pattern, right? That transition is what is going to help you break the pattern. As you were talking initially, I went to my school days. What happened there? 8 o'clock, I go in, 8 to 8:40, first class ends, 8:41, the next class starts. Back to back, back to back. You come home, you have tuitions, etc. So there's a lot of conditioning happening. Then I actually looked into, okay, to your example of two employees. One said, hey, I would like to take a step back and come back. One just switched on and continued. There is also that sense of competition, which kind of leads to that fear of missing out. If I don't do it, somebody else will do it and I will lose it. And as you were talking through that phase, the person in this example went for a bio break, had an idea, and spot on, did it. That's what 80-20 rule also says, right? So I could make that connection in a way where I had read it in theory. And then I was like, okay, that could be a rationale from a body standpoint, from a neurological standpoint, why they say that focus on the 20 and the 80 will, be there. You said that you can be 100% at some point in time of the day, 30%, maybe 20%, maybe 50%. You need to be okay with that. And that would require a lot of self awareness, right? And everything that you're talking about, this, right, Raj, the way the brain kind of helps or may lead to a different kind of phase where it also impacts you differently, not in a healthy way. Essentially, what you're saying is that it's important to slow down, be more observant and slow down. Now, I'm sure everybody would be aware of this. They would have heard this, that we need to slow down, slow living, and all of that. My question is, why does it get so difficult?
First of all, you've helped me already by taking us back to the school time. Like the conditioning starts at a very early age. The competition starts at that very age, and it comes from our immediate surrounding. And you can say that after moving to Germany, I thought that it's a first world country. There might be something different. There is a lot of focus given on well-being and all these aspects. But somewhere or the other, that social conditioning is universal. I don't want to go deeper into this topic because this is kind of controversial, but there are a lot of documentaries and videos about how schooling is a part of a capitalistic. The competition starts from there. And understanding that, yeah, we need to slow down. People ask me that if that health situation did not happen, would you have taken a sabbatical and given yourself this break? No, I would not move myself out of it. Because when you slow down, think about your school time, fourth grade, fifth grade, you go for your games period and your teacher says, okay, let's warm up. Everyone stand in one line, 1, 2, 3, go. Touch the pole and come back. Whoever came first was glorified.
True.
That's what we do in our daily lives. And there were a lot of people who may have slowed down after touching the pole or even before reaching the pole. That is your understanding of listening to your body. You didn't want to burn out your body towards the end because you want to please someone. So you took a back step. Nature has given us this ability to understand what our body requires and act upon it. But throughout the schooling, college, work, we don't really get this environment where we can really find someone who's doing the same thing, who's slowing down. We talk of calm leadership, but it's so rare. And then comes the point that who remembers the second person who went to space? So just these nuances have conditioned us to think you're either first or you're no one.
Yeah.
But there is no mention of you can be second, you can be last, but if you saved yourself some energy or if you saved yourself from burning out or if you stopped along the way because you wanted to help someone else, that's brilliant. That's an act that we need to glorify more.
And I think.
But there's this shame associated.
Go ahead.
There's this also kind of shame and guilt associated with it. Doesn't make us take that step.
There's also that label comes in, right?
But before I touch upon this, I wanted to switch my father hat to coaching hat. When you said that people would label me slow, my question to you would be slower than who? Or faster than who? If you compare yourself with someone else, you will always be slower or faster. This is the human nature. This is the capacity that we should exploit to reach our higher potential. Because you are improving yourself, comparing yourself to what you were yesterday. This also applies to unlearning things that make you aggressive, things that make you take impulse decisions. When you compare yourself, you will always feel diminished.
Let's say I'll be a bit of a devil's advocate here, right? Even though I completely agree with what you're saying, but if I don't compare myself with others who are around me, how will I know that I'm doing well? Because it's a race. And the point that you're saying that compare it with your previous self, I mean, that's too slow, right? Like I will obviously improve, but look at my friend, look at my colleague and where they are and where am I? And I have to buck up. I have to get there. How would you beat that thought?
So when we talk about competition, there's healthy competition and there's unhealthy competition. When you think about comparing yourself, what are the things that you're comparing yourself with the other person? That could be materialistic things, which is fair. These are some of the goals that we set, but these are not limitations. You don't need to be married before you're 30. You don't need to have kids. These are prescribed, but again, these are not limitations. So if you're comparing yourself, saying that I could have started my own business when I was in India, but I didn't. Now I'm a father and I'm also trying to establish my coaching business. Would have been better if I did it back then. I would have had more energy, more support from my friends, and I was in the right circle. These are just some of the things that you can reflect. Of course, when you're comparing yourself, who you are comparing with and what you're comparing with, that makes a huge difference. If it's only about materialistic thing, then probably you'll end up being on that side which promotes hustle culture. You might want to be Forbes 30 under 30. You might want to have 3 startups, done 5 exits, have tons of money, and you're still doing a lot of social work, philosophy work, etc. But that also takes a lot of toll on your body.
And we are saying that that's okay. It's a choice that you have probably made. But I think it is important to understand if that is what I have said yes to, I should be aware to realize what I'm saying no to. I think that's where it comes in. I was reading something, and I think it was one of the HR reports global. They say that in a workplace context, 87% experience a lot of stress, and that is chronic stress. And out of that 87%, 40% or more have physical injuries. If they are a right handed person and they're doing a lot of typing and screen work, it happens. To your example of tipping thing, it had happened with me. I was looking at a screen for about 16, 17, 18 hours continuously, facing difficulty in distinguishing between colors. It was so much that I couldn't, especially between contrasts like black and white. A lot of folks experience this stress. It could be because of FOMO, competition, etc. But again and again, it is going back to the point that you started about. Are you aware of yourself, and do you understand what your body is telling you? Like you said, the first pressure point is here. Now, if you had to call out a few signals that body gives which gets ignored, completely ignored, like what are those?
I love how you went from evidence, data about stress to signals. I just love how you frame these journeys. And this is absolutely true. We can go on, and this can turn out to be a 4-part episode just to touch base on the point of stress. Again, this is also something that I'm working on myself. I have this habit of bringing a lot of scientific knowledge or terminologies when I explain things, but I think metaphors work really well. Let's look at stress as a metaphor. What's that one thing other than oxygen that we really need for our existence? And in all the workshops, somebody said, I mean, the answer to it is food for our functioning, for our mental function, for our physical being. We need food. We need food. And to cook food, we need fire. Plants make food from sun, form of fire. We cook food with our stoves or induction. It's a form of fire. Now, think about it. You have all the ingredients prepared. You have the spices, you have everything. And this goes universally to whatever food you're preparing. And then you put it on the stove or put it in the oven. And then there are ways. Every dish you don't need to put for half an hour on high flame. Yeah, every dish has its own recipe. Now think of this fire as your stress cycle. How you use it will impact how the food turns out to be. Now, if you leave the food on high flame, the same food becomes poison. Now, that is burnout. You've just let yourself on chronic stress for a longer duration. You forgot to turn the stove off. You forgot to take a step back. You forgot to have that transition. So same thing happens with stress. Stress is a natural response cycle. It's just the way we are made, that awareness of how this cycle functions, which is something that I dived a little bit earlier, that cortisol awakening response, like how it spikes before you wake up. So it's just an evolutionary thing to save us from a physiological stress. Over a period of time, this whole physiological trigger response merged into psychological responses. And evidence says that psychological and physiological responses trigger the same stress response in the body. So when I get scared from, let's say, walking in the dark, I get scared. I have certain response to that. But if I think about walking through a dark alley, that will also trigger the same neurons in the brain, which will trigger the same stress response. You can put your body in that same stressful cycle. And this is where self-inquiry or self-control comes in handy. And this is something that we don't learn in school. I gave this metaphorical example because I want people to understand that stress is not bad. Chronic stress is, because chronic stress does a lot of things. It dampens your immune system. It stops your cognitive part of the brain. So you can't really think, you can't really assess what is good for me or what is bad. At that point, your brain will use your past experiences only to help you survive, because this is a survival instinct. After every stress response cycle, you need to have a recovery phase. Recovery collides with transition, slowing down. As you slow down, take a step back, you're giving your body that recovery phase. Stress can really work in your favor, given that you understand how to use it to your benefit.
Interesting.
And I think one of the very first thing that I started doing when I knew that this is the body sign. Honestly, when I was in that phase of working in sales, I did not feel any of these signs. Let's understand one more thing, that just like every fingerprint that we have is unique to every person, same is the case with our nervous system. Every nervous system is a combination of your experience, your genome, genetic compositions, temperaments, and how you nurture them. Identical twins, if raised in different environments, can have different traits, can have different health issues. When every nervous system is different, that means every body will also have different ways of interacting. So how you spend time with yourself, how you have this self-talk, how you're treating your body, how much movement are you doing? Are you really treating your body as a temple? Like, are you really giving your body that respect that it needs?
Just to be
Sail through the conditions, and then the body starts responding that way. Like we have the saying, "Natante." So if there's a body that has been giving you signs, and I'm talking about myself here, my body probably gave me signs for the last 2 years. I ignored them, and I didn't even see. And even if I saw, because I was conditioned, I may have eaten something bad last night.
You kind of, like you said, normalized it.
And that's where we had to press the pause button. My conversation with Raj flew by. Today, if you look through the content that we discussed, was essentially more about the why and the what of things. The science behind those behaviors, those body signals, the way our brain kind of adapts, reacts, and the way it has an impact on us. Factors including the society, the parochial, the patriarchal, the conditioning, the conventional, the stereotypes, and all of it, right? The what and the why of it. But the most important part will be the how of it, which is still to come. Consider this part to be the part 1, and I've already asked Raj to come back for a part 2. Let me know in the comment section if this is what you would want. And when he comes back for part 2, we're going to deep dive with his book, The 1, 2, 3 Ways to Create Calmness. If what Raj shared today resonated with you, you can work with him directly. As you know, he's a coach. You can get coaching from him. You can get guidance from him. And an easy way to do that would be to explore his book, 1, 2, 3 Ways of Creating Calmness. And all the details are in the description below. Now, before you go, I would want you to do 2 things for me. Make sure you're following K-Notes. Part 2 won't be a sequel. It'll be yet another essential manual for all of us to kind of imbibe. And at the end of the day, conduct ourselves in a way to be a better human being for ourselves and people around. And leave a comment with just one word. What's your main takeaway today? Thank you for your time, and if you have been through and through the whole video the whole time, thank you for your attention. This is your host Kaustav. Till the next time, take care of yourself, people around, and remember, you are enough. I'll see you soon. Thank you very much for being there.